All right. I am super excited for this one. I'm here with the man, the myth, the legend, Kevin McArdle, the founder of SureSwift Capital. I don't really think he needs an introduction, but by far one of my favorite private equity firms in the space, or holding company, whatever you. How would you describe SureSwift, Kevin?
Yeah, so we prefer the term holding company, and I like to steal from one of my friends, Brent Beshore, put in his annual letter something that resonates with us too. He says, calling us a private equity firm is like calling an ostrich a bird. While factually correct, it doesn't really fit the spirit of the word. So technically we're a private equity firm, but most of what people know about PE, which is buy, load with debt, strip out expenses, and then flip to the next highest buyer, we don't do any of that. We don't plan to liquidate our funds. So, I just prefer software holding company.
Nice. So how many companies have you acquired up to this point?
46 over the last 7 years.
How are
as
you
of recording.
How are you holding up? That's insane.
I've got a great team. There have been points where the wheels kind of felt like they were coming off the car because we either acquired too fast or we didn't hire fast enough, or made some mistakes in acquiring, and then that doesn't feel good. So we started very small. Our size of check has risen over the last 7 years, and we're currently operating, I think, 30 businesses. So we've sold some of the smaller ones. We've sold some ones that didn't work out. And most importantly, we started to divest. Right now, we're squarely focused on bootstrapped B2B SaaS. And early days, we acquired some things that didn't fit that before we decided to focus on that niche. So we have divested some businesses to provide more focus. But 30 is still a lot to be operating. And the secret is just, I've got a wonderful team who manages the day-to-day of each portfolio company.
Nice. And I guess, how did you get into all this? What made you did you just wake up one day and say, hey, I want to acquire 50 plus companies? How did this happen?
I wish I was that insightful. No, I had spent 15 years in corporate America at a company called Cerner, which is a software company, but gigantic. When I started, it was 3,000 people and 300 million in revenue. So already quite big. And then 15 years later, when I left, it was 20,000 people and I think 5 billion in annual revenue. So night and day different from what I'm doing now. But I share that with you to give some context to all I know about business is the software industry. And I got to do sales and leadership and management and run development teams and customer success teams and got to do just about everything in a software company except for write code, because I'm not a developer. And that was a great long run of a career. I was super happy. It was a great company to work for. And I was just ready to do something else. Along the way, I went and got an MBA and realized that entrepreneurs, yourself excluded, are not necessarily geniuses or, the hardest working people in the world or have some heroic talent. They just maybe see the world a little differently than other people, a little bit higher risk tolerance, a little bit harder worker. And I just realized I could do that. And so I had always dreamed of owning my own business, but never had the right idea. And so I was kind of getting a little burnt out in my career, even though I love the company. I had always dreamed about owning my own business, and then, met and got to know somebody who later became my business partner who had this idea of let's acquire profitable internet-based businesses. And that's really as sophisticated as the idea was 7 years ago. Since then, as I've said, we've kind of refined it. But it was the type of idea that fit a lot that I needed, which was, independence, bet on myself, chance to make money, but also I have actually a pretty low financial risk tolerance. So when we started to refine the idea and say, okay, we're just going to buy things that are already profitable. So we're not burning cash. As long as we run it as well or better than the founder did, everything should be fine. And so that was a less risky thing for me, because leaving a 15-year career already carries with it some personal and financial risk. So just a lot of things colliding all at the right time and place.
Nice. Well, I can guarantee you were much smarter than me. I graduated Chico State. We call it Harvard of the West. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Everybody talks about Chico State as the Harvard of the West.
Yeah. It's a total party school. And I graduated with a 2.07 GPA. And I believe that's the lowest recorded graduating GPA.
These get degrees, man. No, I'm curious. I know a lot of your story, but did you you jumped right into entrepreneurship. Am I right?
Yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur like my whole life. I did the cliche eBay store stuff. I sold like it's embarrassing, but like Bean Babies, World of Warcraft, like characters. I'd go on eBay and I'd look for like misspellings. I'd buy it and resell it at a higher price margin. And then I moved into web design for like local bands at my high school. And then I started a company in college. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur just kind of from the get-go. I was, really fortunate to really find my passion early. Like I just love businesses. Like I get nervous when I meet like a founder of like a really successful company. But if it's like an athlete, I'm like, whatever. Like,
yeah. So you weren't at Chico State for the education. You were there because it's not like whatever grade you were getting in your U.S. history class was even less relevant than for most people because you were already on the right path, right? Did you ever consider just like dropping out completely? Because what's the point? Or then you don't get invited to the party.
No, because I needed the financial aid to pay rent. so that was my whole plan going in was like, all right, I got 5 years to figure this out. Or actually it started with 4 years. But then I started a company called Business Apps. It was like a do-yourself, no code mobile app builder. And that started to really take off my senior year. And so I went a 5th year. And the irony is I took a minor in entrepreneurship, didn't go to any of the classes. And I remember I would show up to some of the classes just to play around with the teachers and be like, hey guys, I just want to let you know again, I'm not going to be able to attend. I have a business that I am currently working on, but have fun learning how to run a business. And the teacher loved it.
Professor.
The teacher loved it. He was like, that's what. So Chico State does have a pretty good entrepreneurial department, and I'm forever grateful for them. But anyway, story for another time. But my next question would just be you look at how many deals do you look at like a month?
Yeah, we actually you must not be, well, let me back up, hundreds. And we actually document it for our investors. Like I think they like the notion of like, okay, and it's like by month. So we're recording in February, we just put out a letter for everyone that says in January, we looked at X number of deals and it was probably 153 or something like that. The only ones that made it through the first filter were these 30, and we're down to like actual investigation on these 5, and 2 may have a chance of going to a letter of intent. So we actually publish all that for our investors.
So how do you evaluate those startups? Like what's kind of like your sweet spot in terms of like what gets it over the finish line?
Yeah. So from like top of funnel down, it's got to be SaaS. It's got to be profitable. We like writing checks between $1 and $10 million. So those are 3 pretty quick filters. If you're too small or too big, we still get inbound interest from people trying to sell like digital marketing agencies. And I love that. You can see it's a super healthy business. There's nothing wrong with running an awesome digital marketing agency. It's just not something we would buy. And so then you start looking at more of the details of like, okay, what niche is it in? Is it something we understand? We're pretty tech stack agnostic, which other people have criticized me as like, oh no, you should niche into just one thing so you can hire all the developers for that thing. And while I understand that strategy, that would have limited the number of things we could buy. And then you're kind of tied to a stack, which I don't really want to be tied to a stack. We're industry agnostic. Then you just get into sort of business fundamentals. Like, is it a market we like and that we can understand? And is it something that we think can continue to grow? Is there a team that's there? And that's not a yes or no criteria. It's just like, what value do we place on this thing? If it's a solo founder with no team and no plan, and if they're gone, the business is hosed, well, that's a problem. But if it's a founder who's built up a team and they're ready to step out, then that adds value to the business. And just the usual. I mean, beyond that, there's not a lot of secrets or, special sauce, Andrew. It's just like, is it a healthy business that we want to own forever? And, that's the typical questions that MicroAcquire guides people on.
Yeah, that's usually like, I hate the question of like, my SaaS business is making $50K a month. What is it worth? And there's so much variability into that. Like, what are your customer count? Like quality of customers, churn, market, quality of team, quality of code.
My answer to that would be it's somewhere between 0 and $5 million.
It's like
So
I always say my answer to that is like that's kind of like asking how much does a car cost? Like, is it a Ferrari?
yeah.
Is it a
Or is it on
Mercedes?
blocks in the front yard?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like there's so much variability. So that's a great answer. I guess moving to another question I'd love to ask you is what's your favorite acquisition that you've done at SureSwift? And then I want to know also your favorite microacquire acquisition if you're willing to share that as well.
Yeah, I'll share both, but I don't like the word favorite, and it's like
You got a lot of kids, so you can't pick a favorite.
yeah. I also I was trying to think of a different example because I actually have children, and I don't like comparing businesses that I own to my children because there's like I love my children way more than any of our businesses. But yeah, it's hard to pick a favorite because there's things to like about all of them. Two that are cool stories. Let me put it that way. We own two sister companies. One is called Mail Parser, one is called Doc Parser, and they were created by the same founder. His name's Moritz Dausinger, and we tell the full story on our blog if people want to learn more about it. But part of what I love about those businesses is it's been a really successful acquisition. Like that's it's hard to love a business where you're losing money or it's a failure. And we've had some of those too. So it's been a big success story. We bought them separately. So we bought Mail Parser first, and Doc Parser existed, and Moritz was working on that. And I tried to wrap both into the same deal. And Moritz was like, no, I'm not selling Doc Parser because it's going to be worth more someday. And so we worked into the contract like a first right of refusal agreement where like if he wanted to sell Doc Parser, he was obligated to at least let us know. But the cool part of the story is like we became friends. We stayed in touch. We had been operating Mail Parser for I think like a year and a half. And Moritz and I were just talking on the phone. And it was sort of like he said, he's like, Kevin, I think we both know how this ends. Like you're going to want to acquire Doc Parser because it's going to be just as successful as Mail Parser. And he's like, I'm going to want to sell it to you because the first transaction was a home run for everybody. But he's like, the longer I held on to it, the more valuable it's going to get. And like, so, what do we do? And I'll skip to the end of the story. We worked out a deal that was like really good for both parties. He left really happy. He's on to now his third project that I know about. He's got other startups that predated Mail Parser. We're super happy. We've been able to create jobs for now like 15 people, and it started with like, 2.5. And so just a home run all around. And my favorite part, I just saw Moritz in October in Mexico City, and we were just like laughing and sharing a beer, and like he's become a friend. And so like from every angle, it's just a wonderful deal. Do you know what I mean? Especially the personal connection. And just about every other business that we have, there's something missing from the story that I just told you. Not like we've done a lot of really good deals where we're tight with the founders and everybody's happy, but not quite to that degree of like awesomeness stacking on top of itself.
Nice.
And from and so that was long before microacquire ever existed, except for maybe in your head.
I've heard that. I've actually read that story, and when I read it, I was like, that is badass.
Have you? Yeah, cool. I'm glad you saw it.
Because I follow him on Twitter as well.
Yeah. Well, and you missed out on Founder Summit. You would have been sitting at a table with us having a beer, but you had to bail at the last minute. Remember?
Yeah.
That was why we were together.
Yeah, I would have given you COVID.
Yeah. Okay. I forgot why. I figured it was something like that.
No, I was like exposed, and I didn't want to risk being in quarantine in a week for I think it's 2 weeks or something like that. But yeah.
Well, there's a risk you would have flown down there. Like we tested everybody, and if you were positive, you could vent. So next time, you and me and Moritz can all sit down and tell business stories. But back to your question. Again, not my favorite. There's 3 deals that have at least been listed on MicroAcquire that we have acquired. And I say 3 that have been listed because one of them, we actually felt pretty good that we were going to get a deal done. And well, I'll just tell you, this one's Meet Edgar. So I don't know if you know Laura Roeder. We just announced that we acquired Meet Edgar a few weeks ago. And I've known Laura for 4 years, and we were kind of in discussion. She reached out to me directly when she was thinking about selling the business. We were talking, doing our diligence, et cetera. And she's like, look, Kevin, I think this has a good chance of us doing a deal, but I have to list it on MicroAcquire just to see if somebody will, come out of the woodwork and overpay, give me a strategic multiple, whatever. And I was like, I totally understand that. Good luck, and we'll continue talking. And it ended up, I know she had interest and offers from MicroAcquire, because like who doesn't when you list a healthy business, but we ended up doing the deal together. And that's another one that I'm super excited about, really very highly of Laura. But I don't count that as like, we didn't find it on MicroAcquire. So I'm going to set that one aside. The one that we found on MicroAcquire that is my favorite, Lead Dino. And I don't know if you ever like talked to those guys, but it was the reason why I like that business, not just because it's a super healthy business and the founders are great people. They went through two processes that fell apart. And I think this is part of when you and I talked in the early days of MicroAcquire, I love that it was focused on founders and helping founders find. And these three guys, Brett, Mike, and Carson, were business partners for I think like 7 years. They decided to sell the business for their own that I won't get into. And they had two prospective buyers that had written them letters of intent, and the deal went sour. And I can't remember the details or the reasons why. We talk about this again a little bit in the blog, but it's kind of their business, not ours. And they found us. We found the business through MicroAcquire. We start having a conversation, and you could just feel the like stress come out of their shoulders once we got a little bit into the process. And Mike, who was leading for the three of them, he's the CEO. Once we got to a level of trust where we'd had enough conversations, he kind of believed what we were telling him. We liked the business and, kind of broke through that surfacey layer stuff. And we're just talking about like the real details. Yeah. He told us that he had been burned twice, and it wasn't through their fault. It's not like the buyers found something in diligence that spooked them. It was just bad buyers. Like is that you say it. And he's just like, I feel so much more comfortable. Like we've been bitten twice, and everybody's spooked that this is going to be a third strike. And I don't know if we can handle that as a founding team. So what I like about it is, yes, we've got a great business. We've got a great team that came with it. The founders are happy, but the fact that they went through that turmoil and we provided a safe landing spot for their business, and it's a stressful deal to sell a business. Like there's no stress-free event where you're selling a business, but minimize the stress as much as possible and just let them know, like, look, we got you. We're not those other people. This is going to be a simple, straightforward, honest transaction. Let's get down to this. And that's why that's my favorite from MicroAcquire so far.
Nice. And compliments to you. Also, nice shirt. I'm wearing your swag as well.
Yeah.
How do I pull it up? There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. I mean, I've heard so much just good feedback from buyers in terms of SureSwift, and that's genuine feedback in terms of Chris on our team. I've interfaced Selena. Everyone is just fantastic over there. So that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, I got one of the nicest emails ever was somebody telling us he's not going to sell his business to us, and he was like, "This has been the greatest experience. I've learned a lot. You've been really good to me and my partner. I think they decided not to sell, but they may be selling to somebody else." But it was just it was not about me as a compliment to the team. And because that's what we care about. That's what we try for. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you getting an email from somebody's like, the MicroAcquire experience was perfect. And, at the end, I sold my business. But I care about the founder experience. And I just told you, we look at 150 deals and we might close one. So 149 people are going to have some sort of a SureSwift experience that doesn't result in selling their business to us. And I care about all those 149 people too. I want them to have a good experience with us. And so, yeah, I'm happy to hear you get that feedback too, because we work hard at a lot about it.
I guess, moving on to, ways to help founders, any like helpful tips for founders, looking to sell their business this year, like yellow flags or just things to prepare for? Like if they were looking to go to market, like if you had to just I'm sure you could give like 20 tips, but if you had to pick like maybe the top like 3, what would you tell a founder aside from having a great business? We all know that one.
Yeah, have a great business is the easiest way to sell a great business. So I like the simple answer is like be honest and straightforward. And what that means depends on what stage you are. So like I tell founders all the time, it's okay to initiate a conversation or talk to somebody like me who buys businesses even if you don't intend to sell your business for 2 years, or even if you think you may never sell, right? And at the end of the day, like every business gets sold, right? Or every founder leaves their business, whether they sell it or they get put in the ground. So it's okay to have a plan, even if you don't want to exercise that plan for 5 years. Because I see people at conferences or online or whatever, and it's always this like, well, I'm not ready to sell my business, but how does it work? Explain to me this or that, or like, what happens to the team? We get a lot of the same common questions. And I'm just like, that's fine. Like, but you don't need the preamble of we're not ready to sell, but it's okay to just like ask the question, explore. And so in that stage, being open and honest and forthright is just like, look, I don't have a whole bunch of diligence stuff. Like, we're not going to get into a conversation about like, what's my MRR and my churn or whatever. Like, just set expectations. Like, I just want to understand how your process works. And I'm not looking to sell right now, but I want to be more informed for a year from now. And then if you are like a little bit more serious to where you might want to list on MicroAcquire, you got to be honest and straightforward. Like, have your stuff in a pile. Like have your self organized. Your website, Andrew, tells everybody the questions that they should expect from buyers. It's not a secret. And if you don't have the answers to those questions, like just wait or get those answers written down. Like the transactions where the founder is ready make everything so much easier. And it makes me more confident that if they know how to come into this conversation, they probably are doing a good job of planning and organizing. So that's kind of that middle stage where maybe you're just kind of testing the waters, looking for valuation. But I can't give, like you said, I can't give you a valuation without some sort of information. And me giving you a valuation is not a commitment to buy, and you're not committing to sell. It's just a phase in your journey as an entrepreneur. But then when you are ready to sell, be prepared for the full inspection of your business and don't hide anything, because we're probably going to find it. And at some point, you're going to have to let somebody else look at the code to make sure it's not crumbling. And like, you just got to be prepared for that. And, hiding things or misleading just erodes trust. And it might just mean like we walk away. So that's kind of just like my advice would be honest and transparent, but understand what stage of the process you're at to know what level of transparency.
Yeah, I like that. I think, I did a lot of those things correctly when I sold business apps to the company we were previously talking about, and then incorrectly before I sold it. Like, one weird thing that I think a lot of founders do, and I did it too, is where you do this dance of like, we're not for sale at all, but but
I'm curious.
But it's so much easier. And then once I started, building relationships with people in advance, like you just mentioned, and saying, look, I'm going to sell this business at one point in time. I want to keep you updated. And I would update buyers almost like, like you would update investors, like keep them like, hey, we were just featured in this, blog, or we just announced this new product launch, or here's, kind of how the business is trending. And I would do it, quarterly. And then when the time came to sell, it just cut out a lot of the, like, are you serious? You wasting my time? Like, so I think a lot of founders like don't understand, like, it's okay to just say, I'm looking to sell my business. Like, do you want to have a conversation around that?
Yeah.
Rather than doing this weird dance, hoping to get some crazy multiple.
And I also want to make clear, it's also okay to say, I want to understand the process so that when I am ready to sell this, I understand it better, because I'm not ready right now. Like, I'm happy to talk to founders all the time, just about like, where are you? Like, what's working? What's not working? Can we help? Do I know somebody else who can help? Like, I'm not saying I only want to talk to people when they're ready to sell, but just know which stage you're at and be honest with the person on the other side of the conversation about where you're at. And then that just sets the tone for like, okay, now I know what conversation we're having.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was referring more towards like, we would get inbound requests from like strategic. Mm-hmm. And when I think back, I'm like, I should have handled that. Like, yeah, we're open to a conversation, but it was always like a guarded, like, if you say that, like, you're open to selling, it like devalues you, when it really does kind of the opposite sometimes.
That's a good point. I like to think of it as like, everything's for sale. And we're on the other end of this, Andrew. So like, we get inbound interest for our portfolio company, right? Like, really frequently. And my answer is always like, well, we're not planning to sell it, but everything has a price. So like, that's me coming into the conversation. Like, I love this business. I'm not looking to sell it. Sometimes we'll just tell people outright, like, here's our current revenue. If it's less than a 10x multiple on the revenue, then we're not interested. And that makes it like, here's, my number. And I know you got to do diligence. Like, can you get to that number or not? But I'm saying, like, if that's out of the ballpark for what we're talking about, then let's just not, waste each other's time. There's a way to handle it and I'm being like super direct in this conversation. I might like massage it a little bit with the actual conversation, but it's totally okay to say like, let's have a conversation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess, a follow on to the point I was making was just the lack of education in terms of like how to position your business to be attractive. Because, you look at a lot of businesses, and when you're talking to a corp dev team or something like that, they are also looking at a lot of businesses and getting inbound requests. And so if you do this weird dance where you're like really held off, at least this is just my experience, it tends to push off the buyer because they can't tell if you're serious or if you're just wasting their time. So I always just like, going back to your first point, is just being honest. Like, where are you at your stage? What are you looking for? Is it advice? Are you looking to sell your business? Are you looking to just kind of, test the waters? Like, where is my valuation at? So that's really good advice. And I guess, anything else you'd add to that?
Yeah, part of what I love about microacquire is that, it's intended for founders to help them be successful. And I think at some point of growth or stage of a business, it's part of your obligation as the founder, CEO, whatever title you want to give, to start thinking about whether you have investors, you've got a co-founder, you've got a team, or what, even just for yourself personally. This is part of the evolution of being an entrepreneur. You need to understand what it's like to sell a business, even if you're not in the market right now. So it's going beyond what you're saying, Andrew. What I wanted to add is like, it's good to educate yourself. And I'm almost like, you're obligated to educate yourself so that you're ready for that evolution of the business, because unfortunately, sometimes it comes quicker than we're ready. And we've seen a lot of situations where people are sort of forced to sell a business for one reason or another. And if you haven't at least thought about these things, haven't had a couple of conversations, haven't like documented the things you're going to document, gonna sell at a discount.
Yeah. I think, I think back of my younger days, and I used to just think, getting acquired was like GoDaddy showing up with a check, being like, hey, welcome to GoDaddy. Like, we're going to acquire you.
Yeah.
But yeah, just understanding just like, the more you know about like an acquisition process, the higher your chances of successfully closing a deal. So I totally agree with you on that. So moving on to just like the final questions. So we've had a crazy year in terms of, M&A activity, 2022. It's hard to predict the future. Any sort of like thoughts on, maybe what's next for SureSwift, what's next for the industry, upcoming industry trends? Like what's something that maybe you'd make a bet on? Could be a growth goal for SureSwift. It could be the market, just any sort of like unique industry insight that you might expect to play out this year.
Yeah. That's a tough question. I'm not a gambler, so I don't like making bets. But so the simplest question to answer, because I know the most about it, is like, what's in store for SureSwift? And it's been 7 years and we've done a whole lot of things wrong. And there's a whole lot of things we can still improve upon. That said, like, I'm so confident in our team, our process, where we sit in the market. I'm like, we are just going to not be distracted. I feel like we are one of the best, if not the best company in the world to acquire bootstrapped B2B SaaS businesses between $1 and $10 million in value. Full stop. Let's just do more of that, better at that. And by more, it doesn't necessarily have to be more deals, but there's like more of the right deals is all I want to think about. And like I said, every once in a while, something comes in that looks shiny and different and cool and would be a wonderful business to own. And I'm like, nope. No distraction. So I think that's what you'll see from us is like nothing super, different, or, other people might say not that interesting. We're just going to keep being awesome at what we're already good at. As far as the market, I mean, you're better to answer that question. You just have a different lens and you see it from so many different angles, like founders, buyers and investment vehicles and things like that. I'll tell you something I worry about, and I would like to get your perspective, turn questions around. Part of the greatness of microacquire is it's made process easier for founders. It's made deal flow easier for prospective buyers. And that creates a super healthy market. My concern is that I know there are bad actors in this, just in the world, but in the buying and selling of and I worry, not for the health of microacquire, but like, I don't know how to phrase it, Andrew, but like, I worry that there's going to be bumps in the road here as our industry continues to evolve. And I'm super bullish, like long term, but I worry about like short term. that not everybody knows that there's bad actors, and not everybody has felt the sting of like doing a bad deal. Sort of like I was listening to somebody talking about just investing in general, and we've been on the longest bull run of your and my lifetimes, right? And literally have heard investors say, I don't really know what a downturn looks like because I haven't lived through. And we've had '08 and all this, but like in general, everything's up and to the right. And I worry that in our space, nobody's seen like a big failure. Not enough people have seen failure that everybody thinks this is, maybe that's the simple way to put it. Your marketplace, people like us, others documenting, here's how I did it, here's the success. You buy a great business, you do the right things, that business should continue to grow. And there's not enough, it almost makes it look, and I worry that too many people are going to step into this with either their own money or other people's money thinking it's easy and get hit by a train. Is that something that you see or worry about, or am I just like?
I mean, you could also say, anyone who starts a startup is an idiot because the success rate is, 10%. If anything, I would say I'd go back to some of your previous points where you acquired companies and it didn't work out. Sometimes, if you're worried about people buying a company and not working out, that's part of the process of, like, I've failed so many times to be successful at stuff that I do. And I think that's a part of the reason that you're successful. So, I mean, yeah, I think people are getting a little fast and loose. But I don't think it's a concerning problem to the point where it's like, hey, just buy Bitcoin. Like, just buy Bitcoin. You can make that sort of argument against any sort of investment, whether it's starting a new business, whether it's buying cryptocurrencies, whether it's buying an NFT or something like that, angel investing. So yeah, I mean, I think just the more education that we create, where we educate, both buyers and sellers on, how to properly do an acquisition, like what is your plan post acquisition? I think that's how, the market will mature, and then will grow and bring more opportunities to founders looking. Because what I think is going to happen is, for the past 2 years, we've just had, let's call it like 100 PE firms that would be willing to buy sub, let's call it 20 million businesses. And I think with the right tooling and the right guidance, and even through advisory services that we provide within McArdle. So you can hire an M&A advisor, you can hire a due diligence expert, you can hire someone for valuations, you can hire an attorney. And I think the more that we, equip people to essentially create their own private equity firms with, all the tools that people kind of like yourself had to put together over, a period of 7 years, I think we can reduce that risk. But yeah, I mean, there's always a bad angel investment. There's always a startup that fails. There's always an acquisition that goes south. There's I think it was a founder of Cisco that said 1 out of 3 acquisitions that they would do would fail. So even at the top, so just a disclaimer for people listening to this, acquisitions are hard. They're not easy. Number one, you need the capital. 2, you need to know what you're doing in terms of, like, if you don't have any experience in SaaS and you're acquiring a bunch of SaaS companies, like, it's going to be a big learning curve, but you are kind of skipping over, the product market fit stage. So I always recommend start small, like hopefully, like if someone, acquires a company, it doesn't work out, it's on the smaller end. But candid opinion, no, I don't see it being an issue. I think the bigger issue is probably just founders selling their companies for too cheap, and using advisory services that charge too much. What's your take on that?
That was one of the when you first told me about MicroCard, that was the killer feature for me. After you kind of laid out the vision of what you were trying to build, I was like, I don't want a broker in 5 years, especially in our space with like SaaS and online, they charge hefty, and I'm not sure they deliver. And I know lots of brokers in this space. Have done business with lots of brokers. They're good people. It's a reasonable business model, but your business model puts so much power and control in the hands of founders at a way lower price. Can't be free, right? Like, the true, you can still list and sell a business on MicroCard for free, versus a huge percentage. Yeah. So I do think that is will continue big trend that we see. And back to your earlier point, like, I guess there's inherently risk in business. We all know this. I just hate seeing people like fail when they weren't going into it eyes wide open. But that's not my problem to solve. And I think you're right. Like if you're educating people and trying to help people along the path of like, here's the things to do to lower your chances of failure, or at least understand the risks that you're seeing. Like that's all you can do. And all I can do is like tell people, here's my experience. Here's some things to look out for. Here's some ways I've failed. Like try not to do those things, go invent all new ways to fail, but know that failure is part of the deal when you're, running a business. So yeah, I like your lens on it. It's just like, that's the deal with startups. Like you can't
just high risk.
It's a high risk deal.
Yeah. There's no, I mean, this would be a funner, longer conversation of just like how to de-risk acquisitions, or how to de-risk even launching a startup. There's so much education out there. And I think that's where it really starts, is learning from other people's failures and mistakes. And I think the more that people share those publicly, the more they can help other people not make those same mistakes. Because a lot of the mistakes that I see with startups or, acquisitions, I haven't really heard too many in terms of acquisitions, aside from, code being awful, had to rebuild, the code base, stuff like that. But that stuff being shared, like the common pitfalls of an acquisition, people can learn from that and then avoid those mistakes. But yeah, with any sort of investment or any sort of, entrepreneurial endeavor, there's a very, very high risk of failure. It's literally, you have, a 10% chance of success starting a business. I would argue your chances of success when acquiring a business is probably higher, because you're skipping over, some of the hardest parts, like finding customers and product market fit. And then you might be you might budget 50K. And I have friends who, go up to like 150K and they still aren't there. So probably like we could probably talk about that for a while, but I get what you're saying in terms of, as the buyer pool increases, not all of them are going to be, as sophisticated and as experienced as yourself. And so at MicroAcquire, what we're trying to do is build tools that help with things like you have a due diligence team, like other people don't. Like, what if there was tools for due diligence, or what if there was, tools that basically automated, the legal document creation, or, allowed you to, find an advisor to help with, the whole process, like when you need it, just to point out any yellow flags you might not be catching. So, yeah.
That's awesome. I think it's a huge service to the whole industry. And you're right, like if the chances of failure of a startup are 90%, the chances of failure for an acquisition should be way lower, or chances of success be way higher, depending on, but it's never going to be zero. The thing about an acquisition is like, you still have the just life and business is unpredictable and risk, but in terms of like wrong price, tech blowing up on you, team issues that you didn't know about, legal issues, the contract things that there's a relatively, it's not a short list, but there's a list. It's a countable list of things that are the predictable things that go wrong in a business of, a certain size. And, people like you, people like me can share to the world and others, like, here's our take on that list of things. And here's what we look at in our diligence. Here's what we care about in terms of the transition process. Here's the things that we've done wrong. So you can learn. And it is versus like a startup is like, the universe is so big for like things that you could start. You don't even know where to consider the risks, right? Because it depends on the market and the pricing and the customers. And it's just not infinite, the number of risks that you're facing starting a company. But an acquisition is a more straightforward thing. Consider people can get educated, take the time to do it to lower.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think it'll be interesting to see how, the next, this is probably like way, I don't even want to talk about this because it'll take us down a rabbit hole. But like, are we in a bubble? Like, like if we see an economic downturn, how is that going to affect acquisitions? So that'll be interesting. But maybe we'll see. We'll save that one for. I don't want to put an opinion on there where I think we're at, but.
I will tell you, I will give you a prediction here. Like, yes, we will see a downturn. We may be in the middle of it right now, middle of February 2022. And inherently that means other people have less cash than they thought they did 45 days ago. And that may sort of slow acquisitions or reduce prices people are willing to pay. But it is not like your activity, your market, Andrew, is you're never immune to the macroeconomic trends. But like, I think you're pretty well isolated. And my market, like, I don't really care what the worldwide economy does. Like there's hundreds of thousands of startups out there who want to eventually be acquired. There's still way more than enough money in the system to go acquire those businesses. Like I wouldn't sweat it if I'm you or if I'm me or if I'm a startup looking to get acquired in the next 1 to 2 years.
You know, I have like one data point that I'll share is when I launched MicroQuart, it was like 2 months before the pandemic started. And then when the pandemic started, that's when we really started to like, and I couldn't figure it out. I was like, what's going on? And I think it was because people were trying to buy alternative assets rather than like, the stock market was cratering. Even Bitcoin was cratering, which was weird because the whole point of Bitcoin was when the world
correlated.
Yeah. So we'll maybe we'll revisit this on another podcast and see.
Well, it'd be interesting because like that the timing, like you were relatively new. Some of that takeoff that you're describing might have just been the world figuring out that micro acquirers out there. So it'll be interesting to see with a longer lens, like over a period of, now what it's been 2 years, in 5 years, 10 years, you're going to see multiple cycles, big and small. And I think that same thing is always true. Like when the stocks tank, people want alternative assets, but it was also such a dramatic event in the economy and so new in micro acquirers' existence. Like it's hard to like directly predict like, okay, this means that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I wouldn't bet on it. I was just saying what's the term? Correlation does not mean causation. Yeah, it was just something interesting. It could have been just, I don't know, March was the month or whatever maybe. But I do remember it, and I do think about it sometimes like, if the market goes down, obviously startup valuations go down, and then there's buyers with dry powder. Does that increase acquisitions, decrease acquisitions? I'm sure I could, probably do an analogy with homes or something like that. But we'll just have to wait and see. But I got 3 more questions for you, and then I'll let you go. Does that sound cool?
Right. Yeah, let it rip.
All right, favorite book.
So the 2 that came to mind, I feel like, I don't know if they're actually my favorites, but the 2 that came to mind are The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And that's not, it's not a business book. It's more of a life book, and one that you can read over and over again, and you learn something each time. And then as a founder and CEO, one of my favorite, most memorable books is Let My People Go Surfing by, I don't know the right way to pronounce it, the founder of Patagonia. And that's a company that just thinks a little bit differently, does things differently. And it's the history of the company and a view inside their culture and a view inside the mind of like a really interesting, cool founder who you could tell from the beginning. It was like, we sell clothes and gear, but it's about our people and the culture that this guy, Yvon Chouinard, I think is how you pronounce it, but I'm not sure. So those are the first two books that came.
Nice. Who is an entrepreneur that you admire and respect? And it can't be Elon Musk because everyone says Elon Musk.
I never would. You could ask me to list 20 and I wouldn't get to Elon Musk. Not that he's not a super smart and successful guy. He's just not, wouldn't be on my top 20. Maybe that's controversial, but yeah.
That's definitely.
Let's call it a nonconformist. Yeah, I don't know.
You're a contrarian.
So, I'm a contrarian. Thank you. That's hard. I kind of feel like I admire almost all entrepreneurs. Not that all are good humans or nice people, but like just the guts to try something and invent something out of nothing and like create jobs for other people. I feel like I should have a Mount Rushmore of like the 4 people that I admire most.
Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, Babe Ruth.
Your all sports Mount Rushmore. I don't know. Sorry. I wish I had a better answer for that, man. I just
room for everybody. That's a good answer, man.
There's room for everybody. And on it, like
I'm not gonna lie, that's my answer. I'm like,
and there's a woman who is in my hometown of Minneapolis. She runs a really amazing, I'll give you her name. Her name's Heather Manley. Nobody outside of Minneapolis has probably ever heard of her. She has an amazing IT firm. I got to meet her and hear her story. She's built an amazing, she's a good human. Everybody loves her. She's just started a liquor brand called Crooked Water. And that is also amazing. And she's got a third business that she's starting that is in a completely different vertical. I think it's a restaurant. Yeah. I think she and her family started a restaurant. And like, that is also amazing. And so like, she's a repeat entrepreneur. She's a good human. I don't think we celebrate female entrepreneurs enough in this country.
I would agree.
And so, and the reason why that like sparked a thought in my brain is that like, you don't have to be rich and famous to be successful, admirable entrepreneur. Like, I think she's pretty well off. People around here knows who she is, but I would never expect you to know who she is. Like, I love people like that. It's just like doing it building great business, not doing it for fame or glory, just doing it for the love of the work and to create jobs for people and to put something awesome out into the world. Like there's 100,000 of those people right now, just like slugging it out. Those are the people and that's part of why like glorifying Elon Musk, I'm just over it. Like great company, like Tesla, cool. I wish I had one, but like, can we talk about other people for a little bit? You know, that's my beef with you.
Yeah. Well, he is, he'll put you on Mars one day.
I don't want to go. That's another thing. Like, cool science project, bro. But like, I'm not interested. I'm
not going either. I'm not
on a
going.
planet where you can be outside.
I like Earth. I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
Everyone in my neighborhood drives a Tesla. It feels like every house came with a Tesla, and I don't have a Tesla.
Yeah.
But this has been a wonderful conversation, Kevin. And again, I'm the huge supporter of everything that you do for founders and all the education you put out to founders. And it literally, I think I've told you this, but when I launched MicroAcquire, you were one of the first to publicly support it on Twitter, and it meant a lot to me. And
it was just authentic, man. I love what you're doing.
That was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I can't. It feels like 5 to me, honestly. Like the progress that you and your team have made, man. It's amazing. I love those tweets. We put a couple in our newsletters to our newsletter list and to our investors. Like it's like once a month, you're like, oh, hey, it's we've listed this many businesses, this many exits for this much dollars. Happy Tuesday. Like I love that. Just like, and every month it's like bang, 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 getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think you and I know like the numbers are mind blowing, and it's still like there's so much room for you all to grow, for us to grow, startups to exist and be acquired. And like it's an exciting time, man. And I love what you all are doing. You know, it's an honor to be here and talk with you and chat about it. It's really fun.
Yeah, likewise. Well, Kevin, I appreciate you, and definitely please tell the whole team at SureSwift. They're awesome, and I appreciate all of them. And I guess final question: if people want to get a hold of you for advice, maybe they're looking to sell their business, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, 2 ways. So I love chatting with people on Twitter. You know that. So it's Kevin_McArdle, and McArdle only has 1 A, not 2, or sorry, 1 C, not 2.
We'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or sign up for our newsletter. It's called the Founder Squad. Hit our website, you'll get a pop-up, and we put stuff out to anybody on our list once a month, and it's usually tips, links, things we're learning, from others, and things we want to teach people. And that's the best conduit to just like get a steady, slow drip of like, this is SureSwift. So either of those ways.
Right on. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you helping on this podcast with me, and I'm rooting for you, man. I think it's going to be a big year for you.
Likewise. I'm excited for both of us.
All right. Cheers, dude.
Yeah. See ya.